Jedi. It's probably the most well-known nonsense word ever. Even if you've never seen Star Wars, you probably know something about these Jedi folks. They carry glowy swords, they have vague, hard-to-specify magic powers thanks to something called the Force. What is actually the deal with the Jedi? What are they? Where do they come from? And what does the word Jedi actually mean? This is Geek Explainer, and you are about to find out.
Howdy there, folks. Video James here. Me and Turbo Kid are just warming up the muscles for a good old speed run. Here we go. Hang on. Oh, whoo. Okay, hang on. Do you still have your BMX? I didn't think a speed run would involve so much running. All right, you go on ahead without me while I tell these nice folks about your game. Check out Turbo Kid, a retro Metroidvania adventure with crazy weapons, scoundrels and creeps, and best of all, lots of good old-fashioned pixel gore. Now this game is fun as hell. It's easy to pick up but still challenging with beautiful graphics and a kick-ass soundtrack. Looking for a challenge? Here's the deal. Play Turbo Kid, speed run through the wastelands, and see how many alternate endings you can trigger. Thanks for the bike. Any chance I could borrow that turbo glove? Alright, I guess that's a no. Well, go ahead and use the link in the description below and pick up Turbo Kid today. Now back to the video.
Let's address the gargantuan dewback-size elephant in the room, the elephant called Star Wars canon, the officially accepted lore and history of the universe. Even before Lucasfilm was acquired by Disney, Star Wars canon was messier than a no-hands-allowed spaghetti-eating contest. There were 5 distinct levels of canon, the most important of which was what lived in George Lucas's head, which is not necessarily great news considering Lucas was literally pitching characters named Darth Icky and Darth Insanius just a couple years ago. If you think I'm joking, look it up. It won't make you happy. By 2012, Georgie's brain was so overflowing with amazing ideas like these that he had to sell off Lucasfilm to Disney just to relieve the pressure. In April of 2014, the Story Group, the people officially charged with keeping track of Star Wars lore, declared a great purge. They nixed everything but the 6 original movies, the 2008 animated movie Clone Wars, the animated TV series based on said movie, and the Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir comic series. Everything else, from beloved video games like Knights of the Old Republic to my boxed VHS copy of Ewok Adventures: The Caravan of Courage, were written off as legend. Now, the Story Group gave one big caveat here. Legends aren't canon anymore, but they leave the possibility open that some of them still might be true, which means I might still pull from them in this video. I mean, I'll stick to canon as much as I can, but no promises. So what is a Jedi? Contrary to what many people might think, Jedi is not synonymous with someone who just uses the Force, because all kinds of people use the Force. Jedi specifically are those who belong to an institution that ascribes to the Jedi philosophy. Think of it like a monastic order, and the Jedi as warrior monks, but with even worse haircuts somehow. Early drafts of the original Star Wars script even referred to them as Jedi Templars, as a nod to the Knights Templar. So how was the Jedi Order formed? There's actually a great, fascinating answer to that question. I mean, it's really cool, but I can't tell you because all that canon went straight out the garbage chute. Oh, screw it, I'll tell you anyway. I like you. Here we go. The Dawn of the Jedi comic series, now conveniently a legend and once again not necessarily untrue, tells the story of how 36,000 years before the era of the original Star Wars movies, a gang of mysterious pyramid-shaped spaceships gathered Force-sensitive individuals on a planet called Tython. Here they formed the Jedi Order, which meant Mystic Center, which sounds like a great place to have your chakra read or seek out alternative medicine treatments when your back-to-tank option doesn't work out. Over time, the Jedi formed temples all throughout the galaxy, and according to the junior novelization of The Force Awakens, which, yes, is actually a thing, the temple that Luke exiles himself to on Ahch-To before the events of The Force Awakens is the original Jedi Temple. The most famous of all the Jedi temples, however, has to be the one on Coruscant. And no, not because it looks like a tacky Hilton Resort and Spa or like a dumb cruise ship, but because it eventually became the headquarters of the Jedi Order. The temple was built only about 5,000 years before the events of the movies, when the Jedi came in, kicked over a Sith shrine, and built a temple on top of it, which is like a totally cool power move. Although a section of the shrine remained hidden beneath the mountain, slowly permeating the site and clouding the Jedi's force with some dark side mojo, a sort of counter power move, if you will. But in those early days on Coruscant, the Jedi partnered with the Old Republic and helped them enforce and enact their ideals, like ending slavery. And then after a war with the Sith, the Old Republic reorganized, and the Jedi neatly folded into the organization as a peacekeeping force. Then the Republic moved into their temple like an annoying new roommate who starts referring to your belongings as our DVD collection and our holocron archive. After the fall of the Jedi Order at the end of Revenge of the Sith, the Coruscant Temple is transformed into the Imperial Palace and becomes Emperor Palpatine's house. I mean, sure, he could probably afford a regular mansion or a more subdued mid-century modern home, but sure, go for the audacious porn hotel palace. Whatever, dude. Perhaps because it was tainted by whatever freak Palpatine got up to in it in the ensuing years, but the palace does not become a holy site again after Return of the Jedi. In the Shattered Empire comic miniseries, which is, technically a legend, Luke does pay a visit to the temple to retrieve a clipping from a Force-sensitive tree that lives in the temple's courtyard. Okay, now this is all super fascinating backstory, but you're asking what does it actually take to be a Jedi because you're wondering about yourself. I get it. We've all wondered if we got the goods. Well, the number one, and in many ways only prerequisite to becoming a Jedi, is that you have to be Force-sensitive. You gotta naturally feel that groovy flow of that Force energy good stuff that permeates the universe. But being Force sensitive is an inborn trait, so, if you're looking for another reason to hate your parents and blame them for screwing up your lives, there's a start. As for the science behind the Force, Look, do we have to do this? Okay, okay. We're gonna dig into some stupid stuff, probably the worst part of all Star Wars lore, and I'm gonna state now that I don't want to do this. I didn't come up with this. I'm just an extremely handsome messenger. But okay, this is gonna hurt. Among the many gifts that the prequels gave us, none are richer than the concept of midichlorians. They're microscopic organisms that inhabit every cell of a living thing and conduct the Force, so the more that you have of them, the more Force-sensitive you are. Think of it like having a tapeworm that also gives you superpowers, I guess. There's a blood test to determine the amount of midichlorians a person has. When they do this test on little Anakin Skywalker, his count is 20,000. 20,000 of what? We have no idea. No one ever says. All we're told is it's higher than anyone the Jedi have records of, even Yoda. At which point Yoda gets all defensive and he's like, some women don't even care about midichlorian numbers, and it's more about how you use them. I'm sorry, it's just, I'm trying to get through this. The Force is a bunch of bugs in your blood, folks. Anyway, it's the goal of the Jedi to track down every young Force-sensitive that they can so that they could stick them in what is effectively a boarding school for kids with magic powers. The Jedi make a point of trying to get the kids young so that they could get their powers under control as quickly as possible. And also probably so they can indoctrinate these kids before they realize they have the option to live their free lives where they don't have to have stupid little rat tail braid haircuts. These Jedi younglings are called, younglings. They basically around and are useless floppy children until they're taken on a field trip to Ilum to harvest a kyber crystal that they'll build their lightsaber out of. A trip that, much like your first trip to New York that your parents took you on when you were 7 years old, they'll be far too young to appreciate. They then graduate to the rank of Padawan, where they get their awful haircuts and train under a higher-ranked mentor. Their readiness to move forward is determined by the initiate trials, as shown in the Star Wars canon comic. Should they pass, they become Jedi Knights. And if they keep the right people, a few of them might even become Jedi Masters, and are offered seats on the Jedi High Council. And finally, if you're Yoda and literally no one else, you become Jedi Grand Master. Of course, post-prequel trilogy, this all goes straight out the window. So now we're getting to the really fun stuff, Jedi powers. There's a general set of powers available to all Force users, including limited precognition, telekinesis, enhanced reflexes, and mind tricks. Trained Jedi can access all of these, though there are some Force powers that can only be accessed by Sith or other dark side users, like Force Lightning, which admittedly is extremely tight and probably the greatest lure towards being an evil bag that I can possibly think of. Some Jedi can see far into the future using Force Vision, a power that's first mentioned by Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back, though the ability's pretty rare by that time, due in no small part to all the Jedi being, super dead as hell. Speaking of which, the ability to return after death as a Force spirit is also a nice Jedi exclusive perk. Being able to live forever would have been a nice little bonus for Anakin's last minute change of heart, though that probably didn't motivate him at all. The prequel trilogy teaches us that Qui-Gon was the first Jedi to learn how to do this, and the Clone Wars shows that he was taught by the mysterious Force priestesses. The biggest draw towards becoming a Jedi is, of course, the lightsaber. Unfortunately, the origins of lightsabers aren't exactly covered in canon material, but according to Legends info derived from the Dawn of the Jedi, sabers had their origin in the Jedi attempts to freeze blaster rays. So they're kind of our equivalent of like a long, hard bullet. The Star Wars Tales of the Jedi comics, also relegated to legend status, had the Sith perfecting lightsaber technology. And don't forget that the Sith started as Jedi. As I mentioned earlier, the science behind sabers involves slapping a kyber crystal into the hilt. When Jedi younglings head off to Ilum, each of them are drawn to a crystal that's specifically attuned to their Force presence. It's clear from the prequel trilogy, however, that characters like Palpatine and Darth Maul, who were never Jedi to begin with, are able to get those crystals as well, probably from, like, I don't know, browsing the dark web or Tor or something. I don't know. These kyber crystals directly relate to the colors of the blades of the lightsabers, though there's no satisfying explanation of what the colors actually mean. Originally, it was intended that all lightsabers would be either blue or red, but the saber that Luke builds and uses in Return of the Jedi is green. This decision was made late in the post-production process. The trailers for the movie actually show it as blue. Green and blue indicated good guys, and red meant bad guys, so it was visually easy to keep track of the fights. And in the prequel trilogy, Mace Windu's purple lightsaber meant Sam Jackson asked for a purple lightsaber, and when Samuel L. Jackson asks you for something, you damn well give it to him. After that, all bets were off, so the animated TV series added yellow, black, and white lightsabers. So, what are the Jedi? Let's review. The Jedi are an ancient order of guys who have millions of microscopic space bugs in them that let them shoot lightning out of their hands if they're bad and live forever if they're good, who take kids on boring-ass field trips to caves where they build ancient killing weapons that are used to display whether they're good or bad, but now show whether they're part of a TV series that barely escaped being erased from history or they're possibly just Samuel L. Jackson. I hope that clears everything up.
Hey, this is Mike. Thanks again for watching our video, and thanks to everybody on the Dorkly Patreon for keeping independent animation alive. And if you want to get roasted by Sonic or any of the other cool stuff here, go ahead and check out the Dorkly Patreon. We got early release, ad-free, uncensored videos, Patreon exclusive videos, merch discounts, and a whole bunch more.